Welcome to Curt's Corner. I'm your host, Cur3t's. My guest today, we're very honored to have a lady that had a lifetime of firsts. She was the first female to run the Governor's Cup in Montana, and perhaps the first woman from Montana to ever run a marathon, possibly. She was the first she took first in the Mount Helena run a couple times, and actually held the record in that race for almost 30 years. And later on, she became Lewis and Clark County's first female sheriff, being elected to that office twice in the early 2000s. So, if you haven't guessed by now, her name is Cheryl Liedle. And welcome to the show, Cheryl.
Thank you, Curt.
Yeah,
Good to see you.
We're very honored to have you here.
Thank you.
I like to start out before we get into the Q&A part with my connections to Cheryl, mostly indirectly at first, because I went to school with her husband, Glenn. We went to all three levels to the same schools, Lincoln School, down on 6th Avenue, or the 6th Ward, on the wrong side of the tracks. And then we went to Helena Junior High and Helena High. He was a couple years behind me during that time. Also, indirectly, we have some connections with a couple people that I went to school with as well. They were a year or two ahead of me, and that was Billy High and Pat Hurley. And both of those folks were athletes and went into law enforcement as well, which kind of coincides with Cheryl's life. And another connection we have is we were both paper boys, but you weren't a paper boy.
I was a boy, a paper boy.
Yeah,
too.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I had the longest foot route in town down on the other side of the tracks. And Cheryl, a few years later, had the driving route out to Canyon Ferry.
And York.
And York.
Yep.
Yeah. So we both had long paper routes. Mine was on foot and hers was behind the wheel.
Yep.
A little bit later. But my first actual connection with Cheryl was when, after I got into the sports reporting business, I was doing a story on the Governor's Cup, and came across the fact that she was the first woman to run in the Montana Governor's Cup. So we connected on the phone, and I did an interview at that time, sometime in the 2000s.
Sometime.
Yeah. So Cheryl, back to you. I'm going to throw it back to you. Now let's start at the beginning. Why don't you tell the folks who your parents were?
Oh, my parents, I'm the daughter of Glenn and Dorothy Johnson. We came to Helena from Havre.
Okay.
I was born in Havre.
Okay.
My mom was an English professor at Northern Montana College.
Oh, okay.
My dad worked for B.F. Buttry's,
Oh.
the department store down in Havre.
I spent some time at Buttrey's.
But you
Yep,
did.
there's another connection.
You were a box boy.
I was a box boy.
I
yeah.
remember that.
And a stockman, yeah.
Very, very good at it too. You really were.
Yeah, well, I'll take that.
You take that. We, both families, my mother's family came from Indiana, and they homesteaded along the High Line.
Up on the High Line.
And both my grandmother and grandfather were from homesteading families.
Oh, okay.
And my dad's family migrated to Glasgow, where his father went to work on the Fort Peck Dam.
Oh.
Obviously, during that time.
Helped build the Fort Peck Dam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he became a construction engineer later in Glasgow, and
Okay.
built a lot of the town there, which is
Nice.
pretty special.
Yeah, right.
We moved down to Helena when I was about 7 years old.
Okay.
Dad had completed a lot of education to become a school administrator and a guidance counselor and a teacher.
Oh, okay.
And he was hired by Harriet Miller with the Montana Superintendent of Public Instruction at that time.
Okay.
And so we moved to Helena.
And what school was he at? Where was he working?
He worked at, first in the administration when he went to work for the school district.
Oh, okay.
And then he didn't like being behind a desk, so he requested that he be moved to the Project for Alternative Learning,
Oh, okay.
or the PAL
PAL, yeah.
school.
Right.
And he did a lot of work with kids, giving them outdoor experiences,
Right.
helping them with their self-esteem and confidence. And
Right. So there's another connection there because my son finished his school at PAL, and he talked about floating the river. And when I
Missouri,
asked him
yeah.
about, when I asked him about your dad, he remembered him. So
yeah.
that's quite a project that he, instituted there.
It's amazing how big of impact my father had on people.
Sure.
When he passed away in 2017, I was absolutely amazed at the number of younger adults that came forward and spoke about how my dad had helped them
Right.
become successful in the world and to reach their goals.
Yeah. Well, he's
That's pretty special.
sure helped my son, that project.
That's a great
and,
project.
And I'm sure your dad touched a lot of lives.
He did.
Yeah.
He did.
Okay, and what did your mom do here?
My mom, after we moved, she continued to teach English. She taught at the Helena Tech.
Oh, okay.
She actually wrote a textbook for the Helena Tech that was published and was used nationwide.
Oh, wow, cool.
And then my brother was born in 1969 here in Helena, and
Okay.
then she took care of him,
Okay.
raised him.
Yeah, and his name?
Marshall Johnson.
Yeah.
He's 10 years younger than I am, obviously.
So you probably did some babysitting there for a
Some.
while. Yeah.
Oh, gosh. My brother was a genius. He was very, very smart.
Yeah.
And we always kidded that he got the brains in the family and I got the looks. And I always say, well, he got the better part of the deal. But he was just a great kid when he was young, just really easy.
Yeah.
You couldn't ask for a better brother.
Yeah.
I think everybody says that.
Right.
I truly think he was.
So tell us what he's doing now and some of his accomplishments as an adult.
Oh, as an adult, he graduated from MSU with a degree in computer science many years ago, and went to work for a little computer company called Raster Ops
Okay.
in Orem, Utah.
Okay.
And he began to work, he just had a feeling that he could make animation better through the use of coding and computer programming. And so he did. He actually wrote.
So like on the ground floor kind of that field. Yeah.
Yes, right on the ground floor. I remember the computers back in those days were massive.
They were huge. Take up a whole wall.
And Marshall had one, and he would work on that program all hours of the day and night. And he finally was able to achieve a program that smoothed out the pixelations in animation.
Wow.
And that sounds like a small achievement, but it actually is a big achievement.
Right.
Because that really made a difference
Yeah.
in the movie industry.
We take it for granted, that sort of thing.
We do.
And he won some kind of an Oscar, you were telling me?
The first time they used Marshall's program was on the movie Shrek, the original movie. And they used that during that filming. And I don't know, if you go back and you look at the movie Shrek, you can tell that there's no jerkiness, there's no pixelations.
Yeah.
That's why.
Wow.
Marshall, they won an Academy Award for that.
So did he get to go up on stage and get the?
I don't
whatchamacallit?
think he did go up on stage
Yeah,
to
okay.
get the whatchamacallit. I think it's an Oscar,
Yeah.
an Academy Award or something
Yeah,
like that.
it's an
I'm
Oscar,
not
yeah.
really sure what it is, but
Yeah.
he received one of those as his part.
Oh, good.
And now he is high up in the hierarchy of Apple.
Oh,
And
he's done well.
he has done extremely
Done well for a Helena, Montana
And
kid.
he and his wife, during the pandemic, they were unable to have children. And the two of them adopted two young girls
Oh,
that had lost parents during the pandemic.
oh, wow.
And that was a huge thing that they did.
Yeah.
The tremendous amount of paperwork and obstacles for
Oh.
them to overcome. But they adopted two little girls.
Well, good for them.
Rachel her name was Harleen, but she changed it to Rachel. She was 5 when they adopted her, and their other daughter, Olivia, was 10 when
Oh.
they adopted her.
Oh, okay.
So
Good.
I'm very, very proud of them for doing that.
Good.
I get to talk to Olivia and Rachel nearly every day
Oh, nice.
because we have phones, and she
Yeah.
gets to use her phone, but just to talk to me. No social media, nothing
Oh,
like that. But
yeah,
she gets to talk
yeah.
to her aunt.
Yeah, well, that's cool. Okay, now let's start. Let's talk about your running, how you
Okay.
got started in running, where at and when, and what did you do?
I got started running when I was young. I loved to run. I just enjoyed running. We built a house in Pinecrest, which is out by Clancy,
Yeah.
and we had the whole national forest, all of the elkhorns behind us.
Oh, well, yeah.
And I had a collie dog
Trail
at
running.
the time. Yep.
Yeah.
His name was Shane, and he and I would take off almost every day from the house, and we would just run through the hills. We'd walk, we'd run, we'd just explore.
Yeah.
And so when
Great childhood.
it was a great childhood. It was
Yeah.
really good. The
Yeah.
forest, being in the forest and being with nature is the best way to grow up, I think.
Yeah.
And I was blessed to be able to have that.
Yeah.
So I went to school, grade school in Clancy for a couple of years, junior high school. And then we were bused over to Jefferson High in Boulder.
Uh-huh.
That was during the time that the interstate wasn't completed yet, and so we had to
yeah.
take the old roads.
Oh, yeah.
It took a long time to get there.
Yeah.
But we did it, and like every kid, we took gym class.
And the coach saw you running in gym class.
I
I'm
ran,
guessing.
and we
Yeah.
were doing laps around the gym.
And that was his name?
His name was Jim Knoll.
Cano, yeah. And he's still around, I
Is he?
think. Yeah.
I hope he is, because he's a tremendous guy.
I think, I'm pretty sure he is. I think I talked to him. I think he came back in coaching a few years back, but I could be wrong.
I hope so. He snatched me up kind of from the gym and put me on the cross-country team. Of course, I was thrilled, you know. It's like, oh, cool.
Yeah,
I'll do that.
yeah.
And
Something that you love.
something that I loved. I didn't know if I could be good at it or not, but I thought I could run a mile and a half, you know.
Yeah.
And I could, it turned out. And we did really well as a team at Jefferson High that year. I think the first time I ever ran in a meet was the state.
That was your first competition, was at state?
Was it state?
Well,
And
that's quite a baptism of fire.
it was, but it was okay, you know,
Yeah.
because then I didn't have to run in any more meets for
Yeah, that was the end of the year. And you
Yeah.
did well.
We did well.
Yeah.
Yeah, we came out second in the state. So.
Yeah. And
it
tell me about
was
your
good.
shoe. What kind of shoes were you wearing?
I wore, we were not a wealthy family, and I wore nurses' shoes to run in and Converse high tops.
Uh-huh.
And I didn't
Just
know
thinks if
anybody.
you'd have had some spikes.
I'd trip over them, it's guaranteed.
Yeah, you had to get used to them.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see. I actually have. So Billy taught out there.
Billy
Hyde?
Billy was a PE teacher. I don't know if she taught anything else. That was where I noticed.
Okay.
And she was also a track coach.
Okay.
And she was my track coach.
And was she your gym teacher?
No,
teacher
she wasn't
also?
my gym teacher,
But
I
she,
don't think.
okay, but she was your track
But
coach.
she was the track coach.
Yeah.
And I wasn't a very good track runner because it was boring.
Yeah.
I just didn't
Going
really
around in circles.
get interested in it.
Right.
No.
Well, I got a quote from Billy.
Did you?
I did. You know, she went down. I just remember she was one of the best athletes at Lincoln School, bar none, boys or girls.
She was a
ended
tough
up
lady.
at Western Montana and did track. But
She's a tough lady.
so I got a quote from Billy, and she said, she told me, and I'll just read it. Quote, Cheryl and I go back to my teaching days. She was a cross-country runner and very good. She was a smart kid, but I had no idea that she thought anything about law enforcement, unquote. So that was her first memory of you. And then later on, you both were in the same field.
We were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we dive into that first Governor's Cup race marathon that you ran, I'm going to take a sponsorship break, folks. One of our major sponsors is Custom Woodcraft. Earl Fred and his daughter Karen operate a business doing intarsia woodworking, making decorative pictures by laying pieces of various natural hardwoods into a groundwork of solid wood. Earl's number is 406-442-9115, and Karen Fred is at 406-438-7857. And their shop is located at 1614 Grant Street. Also, Commissioner Andy Hunthausen. Andy can be reached at andy@hunthausen.org or 406-461-2922. County Commissioner Andy Hunthausen. Valued leadership, trusted experience. Okay, let's jump back into your sports. Junior year, you transferred to Helena High,
Yeah.
and you ran for the legendary Bill Gilbert.
Yes.
So tell me something about that, your prep career at Helena High.
Well, I transferred. I was a little lost because it was a much larger school than
It was
I
a
was
big city.
used to. It was a big city, bright lights, and I didn't really know anybody. So, yeah, I joined the cross-country team, and I did okay.
They had some good runners.
Had some awesome runners.
Lori Adams,
Ann Kamlowski.
Ann Kamlowski, yeah. Lori
Julie
Adams.
Glenn.
Yeah.
Tremendous runners, and
Yeah.
I was not into that caliber of running at that time.
Not yet.
Not yet.
You
no.
were, yeah, you would develop that later. But you loved it,
Oh, I loved it.
and
yes.
and the camaraderie of being on a team.
Exactly. Those
Yeah.
people, those are friendships that you don't lose. You know, they
Right.
stay with you.
Right.
They really do.
Well, and it's a grueling sport, so you're all doing kind of the same thing. Distance running is not
It's not easy.
not easy. Yeah.
And it's really a solitary sport too.
Yeah.
So when you can form friendships that
Yeah.
understand that
They're
whole
go-
sport.
They're going through the same thing you're going
Yeah,
through, and
exactly.
experiencing the same pain, and
Yep.
yeah, limits and all of that stuff. Trying to pushing yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, 1976. I think the Governor's Cup actually started in Billings in '74,
Okay.
and then came to Helena in '76.
Oh, I did.
And at that time, they had not had a female competitor yet.
Okay.
So tell me about your experience. First of all, getting into that race. What
Well,
took place?
I had heard about the Governor's Cup, and I knew it was a long race. I knew
26
it was
miles.
26 miles or so. And I thought, well, I wonder if I could do that. And I like anything else, it was a challenge.
And did your dad challenge you? And
He did.
what did he do?
Yeah, my dad, and I sat down and I said, you know, I don't know, Dad, do you think I could do this? I remember him saying, well, I don't know, do you think you can do it? And I said, I think I can. And he said, well, I don't know, we can give it a shot. But then he changed his mind. He says, well, if you think you can do it, then you best do it.
Yeah.
And so I went down and tried to sign up.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Where was the sign up at?
It seems to me like it was at the Memorial Park warming house
Okay.
for the ice skating rink,
Yeah.
if I remember right.
And how was that received?
Not well.
Yeah.
I just marched up and said, I want to sign up for the Governor's Cup. And I was told no,
Huh.
that I was a girl and girls don't run marathons.
Right. You're too delicate.
Very delicate,
Yeah.
yes, and I was very delicate at the time.
Yeah, right, Cheryl.
Yeah, and that pissed me off.
Yeah.
And so I went home, and I sat down, and Mom and Dad and Marshall and I, and we sat down and said, well, they won't let me run. What should we do? And Dad said, I think I have an idea. I think if I went and registered you, they would think that I was running, and I could use a different name, and we could dress you up, and you'd look like a boy, and we could get you up to the start of the race, and you could run. It's like, cool, Dad.
Why does this sound like a movie?
That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah. So what kind of clothes did you wear?
I wore my dad's sweats. So they were big and bulky, and you couldn't tell I was a girl.
Yeah.
And of course, I had long hair like this when I was young, and I just put it up in a baseball cap.
Underneath the baseball cap. I like that.
And Dad actually made me a mustache.
Wow, you're kidding
The
me.
stick-on kind.
Yeah, the
But I
fake
was
mustache.
16, and
Wow.
no 16-year-old boy has a mustache.
Yeah. So you didn't wear that.
I did not wear the
Yeah,
mustache.
but okay.
But Dad signed me up, and there
But-
was no problem.
But you got in.
I got in.
Yeah. Okay.
I rode the school bus up to Vigilante Campground
Okay.
with all the rest of the runners.
Okay. And you're
And-
still in disguise. Okay.
Well, without the mustache.
Without the mustache.
And I got off the bus, and they briefed us on what we should be doing. And my mom and dad and my brother and the dog were in the car following.
Okay.
They followed the bus up.
Yeah.
And I think Dad was preparing for a conflict.
Well, if I can interrupt for a second, I think the first Boston Marathon did not have a female until 67 or 68.
Is that right?
And there's this iconic photo of the gal, I can't think of her name, who ran it, where a guy came off the street. I don't know if he was another runner or if he was somebody off the street watching the race, but came and tried to grab her, and she was surrounded by a couple guys that pushed this intruder away, leave her
wow.
alone.
Isn't that something?
Yeah, she's going to finish the race with us, So
That's cool.
this is a few years later in Montana, and as we
Well,
were
we're
always
a little behind.
we were always 10 years behind.
Yeah.
I used to tell people, we get our stuff through the stagecoach, So
Yeah, it's exactly
yeah.
how it works.
So you're the first one
Yeah, I got off the stagecoach.
Okay, so you take off running.
I took off running.
And at that, did you have any idea what 26 miles felt like running? Did you train for it at all? No. And
No, I knew I could take off from our house in Pinecrest, and I could make it all the way up Shingle Creek to McClellan Creek and down Saddle Mountain Drive and around and back to Mom and Dad's house, which was probably 10 miles.
Yeah, that's what I
I
was
knew
gonna
I could
say.
do that.
Yeah,
And I thought, well, it can't be that much harder,
right.
because that was like through the fields
Yeah,
and,
you're
and the
up and down.
meadows.
And,
yeah.
A lot up and down.
So I
yeah.
thought, I can do this.
Okay, so continue.
It was all
What happened
well.
in York?
York, oh my God. I started peeling off my disguise because it was hot. And Dad's sweatpants were about a mile too long
Yeah,
for
they were
me.
probably falling off anyway.
So I'm running on the legs of Dad's sweat. They had to go.
And what kind of shoes again?
Waitress shoes.
Waitress shoes? Okay.
They were
still-
white.
Okay.
I was working at JB's Big Boy at the time.
So they were your work shoes?
Yes, those are my work shoes. And so, yeah, my disguise came off, and Dad picked up my pieces, you know, that I would throw off and discard. And then the cap finally came off, and it was pretty obviously that I was not a boy.
People started noticing.
People started noticing.
The gig was up.
The gig was up. And, you know, I think people in York definitely noticed. But my dad was waiting for me at the York bar with water, not a beer, but water.
Yeah, you were only 16.
I was only 16. And this dog ran out and bit him on the calf. And
Ouch.
took a chunk out of his calf.
Ouch.
And at the time, I knew Dad had gotten bit by a dog, but I didn't realize how badly he'd been bitten.
Wow, really?
But we didn't, he just loaded back up in the car, and away we went again.
Yeah.
With a big bandage on his leg.
Yeah.
To his dying day, he had a chunk of his calf missing from that dog biting him. And we didn't make a big deal out of it. We just kept going.
Kept going, yeah.
So I got about down to the middle of the valley, and my shoes fell apart.
Oh, geez.
Waitress shoes aren't supposed to be running marathons in.
Take that kind of pounding.
And so Dad luckily had thrown my high-top Converse shoes in the car, and so I changed and put those on.
So you had some better shoes.
Well, not really.
They were in one piece at least.
They were in one piece.
Yeah.
And as I kept going, I was getting pretty tired and hot and sore at this point.
Right.
But I wasn't going to quit because I started, you know.
Now, didn't you have like an unofficial escort that kind of picked up?
I did.
And what was that?
Along with my mom and dad and brother and the dog, I had a reserve deputy. It just latched onto me and stayed with me the whole way.
Figured out what you were.
Yeah, figured out that I was a girl too,
And
and he stayed with me
Yeah.
that entire way.
Yeah.
I know he's no longer with us any longer. He passed away several years ago. But
Yeah. Did you guys become friends
Yes.
after that?
yes, we did.
Huh.
And
Was he still on the force when you
No.
started? Okay.
He had started a auto repair business right next to Capital Communications, where we had all of our radios repaired.
Can
And
we use his name?
I can't remember.
Okay. We'll keep
I know
going.
his last name was Bailey,
Oh, okay.
because he was the brother of Leo Bailey.
Oh,
one
yeah, I
of
knew
the-
Leo down in Poplar. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the reserve deputies.
Yeah.
Seems like it was Kurt, maybe.
Oh, good name.
Yeah. But he stayed with me that whole way.
Yeah.
And
Did he give you any
kind and
verbal
gentle,
reinforcement along the way, or
always
was it
constant.
he
like-
was talking to you while you were running?
Back in the day, you
Yeah.
didn't say "you go, girl." That's
That
that's a
hadn't-
phrase that hadn't
That wasn't
been
in vogue
used,
yet, but he was rooting you
it's
on.
like, there's a little girl here, and she's going to do this. Come on, little girl, you can do this.
Wow.
And eventually, my other Converse high tops fell apart, and so we were just running on tape,
Wow.
gauze and tape.
Wow.
And that's lack of prep, total lack of preparation. But you know, we did it.
Yeah,
And
you did it. And where did it finish at?
it finished by running a lap around Capitol High's outdoor track.
Oh, yeah, their practice.
And by the time I got there, of course, my time was probably the worst marathon time there ever was. I spent a lot of time changing shoes.
Yeah, that takes some time. Yeah. Well, I actually looked up that time. So
What time was it?
it was 4 hours, 39 minutes, and 34 seconds.
You know, a person could do an awful lot in that period of time. other than running.
Yeah.
But I did it,
Yeah.
and I think everybody had pretty much gone home by
Yeah.
the time I made it to the finish line, and so
Yeah.
there was no fanfare to speak of.
Yeah,
It
but-
was something that I achieved for me,
Yeah. Well, good for you.
and I think we all need to do that for ourselves.
Right. Nowadays, they call it breaking glass ceilings.
I think it's more of a rubber ceiling because women bounce off of that. You know, we
Oh,
don't
yeah.
quite break through,
Yeah.
and maybe we're not meant to. I don't know.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
mean, we're tough. Women are completely able to do almost anything a man is able to do within limits.
Sure.
Our physical strength isn't as great,
Yeah.
but our emotions and
And your
some
dad
of the
raised you that.
strengths.
You had a good role model in your dad, didn't he? Kind of.
he did raise me to believe that anyone, no matter what their gender, their race, gender preference, nothing makes us less.
Right.
Everything that we are is, and in Dad's word is, we are God's children. He
Yeah.
made us,
Yeah.
and we are equal in that.
Yeah. Well, good
And
for him.
we totally believed it. I
Yeah.
did. I didn't know anything else.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get to the Mount Helena run, which you've ran a lot of races. I was looking up your runs in 1981.
I ran a lot in
25, according to the report that I read.
Really? Wow,
and
that's
only
a
took
lot.
second once. You won 24 of them.
I did?
Yeah, according to the report in the paper.
Holy smokes.
But Mount Helena, to me, is what's, and you said it was your favorite.
Yeah.
So you ran that twice, first time in 1980, and you had never run it before,
No.
according to my sources.
No.
And you broke the record, your first time on the course.
I did.
47:04, and that was Shelley Thompson's record, Gordon Thompson's daughter, from 2 years before, 48:16. And then also that year, well, tell me about that. Tell me your memories of that.
I didn't tell you. One of my first jobs was I worked for the Youth Conservation Corps
Oh, okay.
when they first started here in Helena, and we built the trails on Mount
Oh.
Helena.
Wow, yeah.
So I kind of got in on the ground level there too. I
Right.
knew the trails.
Right, okay. Yeah,
But again,
so that didn't hurt.
that didn't hurt.
Yeah,
But Mount Helena has always been an icon.
Of
You
course.
know, it's an icon for us. It's a challenge if you look at it like that, and
Uh-huh.
so let's run it.
yeah,
And there happened to be a race.
Yeah.
So it was hard going up. It was hard going up, but I was really good at running downhill.
You liked going down.
I'm short.
Yeah, yeah. You and Jeff Thomas.
Yep, and we can just get cooking downhill.
Yeah. He said
Yeah.
his advantage was being built low to the ground.
Right, like a fire plug. I was a fire plug. He was more of a beanstalk. Yep.
But
that,
yeah,
that was the most fun run I've ever participated in. It was
Yeah.
just a blast.
yeah, nice. And you were good at it. Also that year, 1980, you won the Attention Home Mini Marathon 10K race in 40:38. And there were a couple of other iconic ladies in that race that you beat, took second and third.
Who were those?
Ann Danzer,
Oh, Anne.
future
yes.
Olympian,
I know. She's
marathon,
wow.
Olympic trials. She wasn't an Olympian. She wasn't an Olympian, but she qualified for the Olympic
She
trials.
was really, really good. I see her. She's a quilter now.
Oh, she is. Yeah, we're going to get into that later on too.
Yep.
And then the other gal was Bobby Dixon.
Oh,
Another-
Bobby Pomeroy.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Really good runners.
Yeah. So
Great
there's a
ladies.
triumphant right there that are like the Mount Rushmore of female runners.
Could
in-
have put us on a
in Helena.
mountain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lori Adams, you guys were among the first. You
darned.
successfully defended your title. I just want to read some of these races that you won in
I
1981.
can't remember any of them. So,
Yeah, well,
yes.
I found a few of them. And I was thinking as I was looking them up, that could have been the year of Cheryl Johnson in terms of women runners in Montana.
It must have been.
Earlier that summer, or the spring, you won foot races almost, I mean, for that entire summer, 25 races, that's like almost twice a
lot.
week. And you were winning.
That's a lot.
So you, Missoula 10K bank run you won. Ann Denzer was in that. You won the 20K Governor's Cup in 1981.
That I remember.
Yes,
yeah,
and
I do
that was a record. It was 1:16:42, and it lasted for 15 years.
I'll be darned.
And it was finally broke by a gal by the name of Karen Sanford Gall from Billings, and she had the marathon record later on, or maybe at that time.
Wow.
And that lasted until our own Heather Lieberg came along and broke her record. You won the Capital Runaround 10K, and you finished 8th overall against the men, and Danzer was second in that. And then Jeff sent me a couple clippings of some other big wins. The York to Canyon Ferry race.
Don't
You
remember,
remember that?
either. Must have been on Jimtown Road.
And I think so. And then the Fleet Foot Classic in July. Set a record in both of those. Bobby Dixon finished behind you. Any memories of those two races?
Not really, no.
Oh, okay.
I was too busy delivering newspapers.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
I don't remember.
Besides that, in our first interview, I learned that you don't look back.
No,
You know, you just do things and then you always look ahead.
you got to look ahead.
But it takes
Never-
somebody like me. I've made my living looking back, so.
And thank God there's people like you.
Oh, well,
because the rest of us would lose things if it
Yeah.
wasn't for people like you.
Well, I've had a lot of fun. And then you went on later on, that fall, you won the Billings Half Marathon. Do you remember that?
No.
Okay. You broke your own record at the that Attention Home Mini Marathon. Now, in the IR article, when they interviewed you after the Mount Helena run, your second Mount Helena run, which was your record run, it said that you were thinking about the Arizona's Fiesta Bowl Marathon in.
Oh.
Do you remember that? Did you
I-
follow through with that?
No. Well, I think
Because you had quick
started
marathons,
to.
you fell back to shorter races.
Right.
Yeah, half marathon at the longest.
Seems to me like a fella in town tried to get me motivated to do that marathon.
Uh-huh.
And he was a good runner, and so he kind of helped me out a little bit. But marathons are too long.
Yeah,
They were just too long.
and you had some sponsors. By now, you've got sponsors that are sponsoring you.
I
correct?
did.
And who were some of your sponsors?
Well, the first sponsor that I ever acquired was Last Chance Transportation Company,
Okay.
or Solo Sports. It was a sporting goods store here in town years
Okay.
ago.
Okay, and the owner?
The owner was Dave Armstrong
Dave
Jr.
Armstrong Jr.
And his dad, of course, was
His-
pretty iconic. in
His dad was the
Helena.
Rimini Musher guy.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
with the sled dogs.
And yeah, Dave and they really helped me out a lot.
Yeah.
And I ended up teaching cross-country skiing for him then
Oh, yeah, okay.
in the wintertime.
Okay,
So when I wasn't running, I was skiing.
yeah, yeah.
And then Capital Sports and Western, the all-season sports shop, was a sponsor. And then some of the bigger sponsors, Moving Comfort, the bra company.
Moving comfort.
Moving
huh?
Comfort.
Yeah,
It's like, okay, I'll take it.
that works.
And I believe that New Balance picked up a sponsorship too.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I didn't really think too much about those. It was nice that they did.
Yeah, it was
but
nice to have
it
that
helped
support.
out.
Yeah,
It did.
you bet.
Because traveling all over the state running is, you know, even though you might drive a Volkswagen,
Yeah.
it still costs gas money.
It's a big state.
Yeah.
It's a lot of driving.
Yeah.
Now you had something, let's see, Peaks to Prairie and Red Lodge.
Yep.
Is that where you got hurt?
Yeah.
Tell us, folks, about that. Was that the same year, 81, or was it the next year?
No, I think that was the next year.
82, okay.
Yeah. Of course, I'd gone through the winter teaching skiing, and then the spring came, and it was time to get geared up for the triathlons, running. And I remember my hip didn't feel well at all. I'd run, and my hip would feel funny.
Yeah,
And so I'd have to stop and walk.
yeah,
But I thought, no, it's probably just a cramp or something. And so I was asked to participate in the Peaks to Prairie Triathlon by Stan Bradshaw, who worked at Fish, Wildlife, and Parks at the time.
Oh, that's a triathlon.
It was a triathlon,
Yeah,
I
so you had to do
believe.
some swimming and biking, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
but each of us did
Oh, you
different
did your
legs.
own, did your own legs, so
I
you
was,
did the running.
I was
yeah.
the running
Yeah.
portion of that, and I was the beginning portion of that triathlon, which actually worked out okay.
Yeah,
So we started in Red Lodge, and it seems like Ann Danzer was part of that team too.
yeah, you mentioned her name,
But
Rick Schneider.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly, but
Yeah,
we started in Red Lodge, and we were to run down to a point just outside of Billings where a bike would take over, and then the final leg was a canoe leg
okay.
on the river. And I was doing great, running along, and all of a sudden my hip felt funny again. I thought, no, I'll just slog through it.
Yeah,
And about 2 steps later, I was on the ground. My leg had completely given up on me. It was my right leg. And I couldn't get up.
oh geez.
So I believe they took me to the hospital in Billings, where they did x-rays and everything, found out I had a pretty severe stress fracture in that hip, which stands to reason, all that running.
Yeah, a lot of pounding.
And they wanted to do surgery, and I said, no, I'm going to go home. I'm fine. I could sort of walk, and they gave me a set of crutches and a cane, and I left
Yeah,
and went home.
yeah,
But that was the end of my running career,
yeah.
for all intents and purposes.
And you didn't get it fixed right away, didn't you? Wait about 20 years before you finally got it?
Well, it stopped hurting.
Yeah, okay.
And I went through all my law enforcement career with
Yeah,
a healed stress fracture in my hip.
yeah,
And I skied, and I did a lot of athletic things, rode horses,
right.
did rodeos, did a lot of things, had Harleys,
Yeah, and you had to pass those physicals that they.
had to pass those
That they gave you,
physicals, and I had no problem at all
Yeah,
doing really well in those physicals. So
yeah,
it wasn't until I kind of got old that my mom actually fell and broke her hip, and I think it was probably picking her up
oh,
and getting her to the hospital that I really damaged mine again.
yeah.
So
You
it's kind
said
of
it was time,
full circle.
get it fixed. Yeah,
But we got mom's hip first, got hers fixed first, and then I was on the table next.
yeah. Okay, we're going to take another break, folks, for a couple of my other major sponsors. Brecky Excavating and Construction, and owner Ray Brecky. His phone number is 406-439-5721 or 406-443-8782. And he's located at 5925 Lincoln Road. Also, Exit Realty and Bob Denherder. Bob is located at Western Premier Helena Great Northern Hotel, and his phone number is 406-449-8831. Exit Realty, locally owned and internationally strong. Okay, I want to talk about that paper route for a minute. I came across a photo in the paper when you were doing your paper route, and there was a flood out at Canyon Ferry. And it was a picture of you and Greg
Right.
Salisbury. I went to school with his son, Jeff Salisbury.
I'll be darned.
And according to the cut line, that he would pick up 8 papers from you and then you couldn't access the other side of the lake?
Right.
Do you remember that?
I do.
He would take 8 papers, bring his boat across the lake, pick up 8 papers from you, and then take them over and then deliver them for you.
That's right.
Until they opened the road again.
I'll be darned. I forgot about that too.
I thought that was
Wow,
interesting.
isn't that something?
Okay, so now you were the youngest certified ski instructor, cross-country ski instructor in the United States. Is that correct?
That was my dad's doing again.
Okay.
I think my dad had Norwegian in him. I'm not sure. We never did the ancestry thing, but
Yeah, well, Johnson.
Johnson
That's a Scandinavian.
could have come from Johansson.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know.
Yeah,
but-
sure.
Yeah, sure.
You betcha.
He was a skiing fanatic.
Oh.
He taught me how to ski. I don't know if I should say this, but he would drag me around the streets of Helena
Behind this
behind
car.
the Volkswagen. And that was illegal
Yeah.
at the time, but
Yeah.
that's how I learned to ski.
If you were a sheriff at the time, you would have
Have
arrested
to arrest him
Yeah,
and
yourself.
me too.
Yeah.
But I was probably only probably 7 or 8, I think, when I started
Yeah.
getting drug around the streets of Helena.
Interesting.
And of course, then we discovered Belmont. And
Yeah.
that was a good discovery.
Yeah.
And so we got to go up there a lot.
Yeah.
And then Dad took to Nordic skiing,
Yeah.
probably because it was cheaper. And so he started
Right.
building, he'd go down and he'd get,
Didn't have to buy the ski passes and the
Right.
lift tickets. Yeah.
right, he would go
Yeah.
down and
What
get,
would you think of how much they cost now?
oh Lord, Dad would turn. Although we did go up and ski quite a bit, even in his later days, because I was teaching kids at Eagle Mount.
Oh, yeah.
And Dad would come up and help with those classes.
Yeah,
and
nice.
he was quite weak and
Yeah.
not well, but he did it anyway.
Yeah,
you know?
good for
It
him.
runs in the family, I
Yeah,
think.
that's right. Just keep going.
Yeah, apple doesn't fall far from the tree here.
Right.
So yes, and we started skiing, and he decided he wanted to become a ski instructor because he'd been approached by a bunch of people wanting to learn to ski in Helena.
Yeah.
And so the YMCA decided to start ski classes, and Dad was their instructor. And I was only about 15 at the time, but Dad decided I should be his co-instructor.
Sure.
So I did, and Dad and I started teaching people how to ski. And then it occurred to us we probably should get certified because we knew there was such an organization, the United States Ski Association.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we did. We started working on getting certified, and I ran up against that wall again where I was
Oh,
not only a woman or a girl,
yeah,
a very young girl, but I was very young.
yeah.
And they didn't really look kindly on
Same
that.
attitude.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was. So I understand how people feel when they're discriminated against.
Yeah,
But part of that was up to me to power through it,
right.
because that's what I was taught. And
yeah.
of course, I had my partner, my dad,
Yeah,
encouraging me right there beside me. So the
Yeah.
two of us did it.
yeah.
And we went on to teach a lot of people how to ski.
Nice.
It was the best thing. That's how I paid for college.
Oh.
An awful lot of it anyway.
Good for
That's
you.
selling Christmas trees
Oh,
for Ken Travis and selling fireworks for Ken.
yeah.
in
Was he the
summer.
teacher? No.
Was he a teacher?
Ken Travis?
He may have been.
Sounds familiar.
I know his wife was a piano teacher. She was my piano
Oh,
teacher
okay.
when I was little. And her daughter, Lori, was my best friend.
Oh, okay. Okay. Speaking of college, tell us about your college days. Started out at Montana State, correct?
I did. Started
then-
out in Bozeman.
Went a couple years and then,
Went a year there. They dropped my major. I really, really wanted to be a park ranger in Glacier National Park.
Ah.
That's what I
Oh.
wanted to do for a living.
that was your first goal, huh?
Yes.
Ah.
And so I went to school to get a degree in resource management. And MSU dropped my major, and so I transferred to U of M
Okay,
the year after. I didn't run when I was at MSU.
okay.
I had discovered that partying was kind of fun too.
Yeah.
So I didn't run
Yeah,
there, but I did run at U of M on their cross-country team.
yeah,
And I wasn't really that good, but I sure had a lot of fun
sure, yeah,
traveling around this part of the United States to
Yeah.
run. It was really fun.
yeah, good experience.
It was. And then I ran out of money again. Actually fell in love with a fellow that lived in Missoula as a taxidermist.
Oh, okay.
And that was my first time I ever had a broken heart.
Oh,
And that's kind of when I started really becoming a good runner,
Oh.
was kind of dealing with that.
yeah, work that out,
Yeah, I worked that.
cathartic,
Yeah.
yeah,
And so that was the years 1980, 1981.
oh, yeah, sure,
That's how that whole thing started.
yeah,
But I dropped out of college, went to work, did all these things, ran a whole lot, taught skiing, worked just about every restaurant in town. It seems like as a terrible waitress, by the way, a terrible waitress, but bank teller, did a lot of different things,
yeah,
and met my first husband when I was teaching him how to ski.
Okay.
And we got married, and he decided that it might be a good idea if you went back to school and got your degree.
yeah,
And he was willing to quit his job with the legislative auditor's office and moved to Missoula with me.
nice,
It only took a year. It didn't
Yeah.
take long to get that forestry degree.
yeah. So you got that.
I got that, and we moved back to Helena, and I started then doing my internship for the degree with Montana Department of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks.
Okay,
And at the time, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks managed the Canyon Ferry State Recreation Area. That was
Oh.
before the Bureau of Reclamation
Okay.
took over management.
okay,
And that's where I did my internship.
yeah,
Finished that and went on to work for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks
okay,
as the assistant manager at Canyon Ferry.
okay,
And part of those duties involved being an ex officio game warden or
okay,
a park ranger in the campgrounds and the day use recreation areas at Canyon Ferry.
okay. Interesting profession. I would say.
Interesting, fun.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of fun, a lot of conflict resolution
Oh, yeah,
went on in recreation areas because there were different user types.
oh, yeah.
There's the drinking users and the non-drinking users usually, and the two didn't
The sober ones and the drunks.
exactly. And there were three of us, myself, Mark Soderlund, and Tom Campbell, the manager of Canyon Ferry.
Oh, yeah.
And we all did, and Leon Hurlbert, the
Leon Hurlbert,
game warden here in
Yeah.
town at the time.
yeah.
That's
Former
what
Deer
we did.
Lodge wrestler.
Awesome wrestler. I
Yeah.
wouldn't want to cross him, I'll
No.
tell you. But we did that. We all loved it.
Yeah,
You know, all of us did that job. It was a really good job.
okay,
But there was the downside of it that included funding through the legislature, and funding was not easy to come by. And when you have to lay off caretakers and maintenance people because there's no funding, it kind of loses some of its appeal.
yeah, yeah,
And that's what happened. We used to contract during the heavy use weekends with the Lewis and Clark County Sheriff's Office, and they would send out deputies, off-duty deputies, or reserve deputies, and help us out in law enforcement during the heavy use weekends.
Sure. Okay.
And that's how I met my future second husband.
Your present husband.
Yes.
Yeah.
We had a drowning in Confederate Bay. And of course, he drove a patrol car, and I had a four-wheel drive Bronco. And the Bronco was needed to get down to the area where the drowning occurred.
Yeah.
And because I had the Bronco and he didn't, I thought I was pretty special. We had a little bit of a conflict.
Yeah. He didn't think you were so special.
He didn't know. He didn't think I was that special, but I thought I was. I was this little park ranger.
Yeah.
No. Anyway.
And his name is Glenn Liedle.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. And that's how that all came about.
Yeah.
I was sitting in the office at Canyon Ferry Village one day working on budget for the next year, and I got a call from the sheriff's office saying that they were looking for a deputy, and would I pass the word along to see if
I think I know
knew
what's coming next.
of any deputies. And in just a short period of time, the person I was talking to on the phone made a comment that was, "Oh, and you don't really need to consider it because you're a girl." It was such a short period of time,
Wow.
that comment, but it caught my attention.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So here we are again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay. Okay, well,
s-
thanks. I'll
yeah.
pass the word. And
We'll see about that.
yes, and
Yeah.
I went down and got an application and applied.
Yeah.
And it took forever to hear back from them. I suppose they were speculating about what to do.
Yeah.
But they got back with me. I went through all the testing and application process, and there was a bit. You had a physical test and a written test and a psychological test and a medical test, as you should. And I had pretty much decided that I was going to just be the best.
Yeah. So you were training for it.
I was training for it.
And you were getting some support from Leon, if I'm correct?
Leon Hurlburt was a
Hurlburt.
huge supporter.
Yeah.
He really was.
Now, did he say, "You go, girl"? Or?
He did not say that exactly, but because that still wasn't in use as a
Okay.
term. But he definitely lit a fire under me,
Yeah, good.
to tell me that I should do it and that I'd be good at it. And then he also explained all of the downsides.
Yeah.
That it's not an easy job. The hours are terrible. The pay is awful. Your family will suffer, and other than that, it's a great job.
And probably some prejudice.
Some prejudice, yeah.
Yeah.
And he was upfront about that. Not that I didn't know that would be, but
Yeah.
I didn't care.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
prejudice is prejudice. It's like I can deal with that.
Another rubber ceiling.
Yeah.
So you passed the test and you got hired?
Yep, I did.
Okay. And served as a deputy for a while?
Served as a deputy for many years, a patrol deputy. I actually, when I first started, they didn't have uniforms to fit me, so I was driving around in a patrol car with just my sheepskin jacket on.
Oh,
And I
wow.
remember that I had been reported as having stolen one of the sheriff's cars
Oh.
because they didn't expect a woman in
A civilian,
sheepskin.
somebody on
Yeah.
the street reported you? Called it in?
They did.
They thought?
They thought I'd stolen the car.
Oh,
And I remember that. It was kind of funny.
yeah.
But, yeah, and I just persevered.
Okay.
And eventually, I think people accepted me.
Yeah.
And I became part of the guys. That wasn't easy, though. You had to earn respect.
Yeah.
And it depended on who you were dealing with, and
That's the best respect, isn't it?
the kind that's earned.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I couldn't tell you the number of incidents, awfulness, and I don't go back there.
Right.
A lot of years of seeing things that most people shouldn't see,
Yeah.
and ugliness,
Well,
but also good stuff, also good things.
Yeah. So, 1999, Sam McCormick took over as sheriff, correct?
I think so.
That was the year that
That's
I
when
found.
he was elected.
And who became his undersheriff?
That guy, I don't know why, but he picked me.
That's kind of what I thought.
I don't know why, but he did, and I accepted.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, do I really want to take that step into administration?
Yeah.
Because there's a huge difference
Yeah.
from being on the street and being a patrol officer to being in the administration.
Right.
You're not part of the guys anymore.
Oh, yeah.
You're a different breed of animal.
Oh, yeah.
But I did, and it was a learning experience.
Right. Well, I looked up that first election when you ran for sheriff was 2002.
Okay.
And you won that.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, I didn't expect to.
You didn't expect to win that?
No, I didn't. I really didn't. And it was kind of surprising when I did. And it's like, that's not what I felt.
Yeah.
What I felt was a great deal of honor that the public entrusted me.
Yeah.
And then a huge sense of responsibility.
Yeah. New challenge.
Yeah.
I got some quotes from those people I mentioned earlier. Pat Hurley,
Yeah.
who was a reserve and is still working as a reserve
He
sheriff.
is, yes.
Quote, Cheryl was a real go-getter. She was always concerned with making the department better. Oh, and she loved horses too. He said.
Oh, she loved horses too. Well, he's right.
Yeah. And
That's
Billy
nice.
from Billy High told me, who was a policeman from, I think she was a cop for about 20 years.
Forever.
Quote from Billy, Cheryl was a good deputy, and when she ended up being sheriff, she was thoughtful about her deputies and always concerned about the citizens, unquote.
Those are nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Nice words from your peers.
And those two, in return, tremendous officers in our community, owes them both a great deal of thanks.
Yeah. Good. Okay, so then you serve your first term. You get elected again in 2006. And 2008, you decide maybe it's time to do something different.
Yeah,
So you resigned.
I did.
And what are your thoughts on that?
That was a rough time.
Yeah.
That was a rough time. There's a point where you feel internally that you're not up to the task. And I felt that. I felt I was tired.
Yeah.
I felt I was worn out. I guess that's the summary.
Well, a lot of stress.
I didn't want to become a burden to that department. That was the thing, was I always put the people of Lewis and Clark County and the people of that department were always first. Second to God. And so when it became clear that it was time to move on, it was time to move on.
Yeah.
I was very, very saddened that I had reached that point because I didn't want to let down people. I didn't want to let people down. I didn't want to quit.
Right.
But the person who helped me probably the most through that was, again, my dad.
Now tell me that story again, when you finally made the decision.
Well,
What was,
I
tell us
remember
that.
I went out to their house and we all sat down, Glenn and Mom and Dad and and I said, I don't know if I can do this anymore. And Dad said, well, I'll tell you what, here's my advice. You put on your uniform, you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and you walk in there and you take charge. And I remember looking at him and going, oh, Dad, I don't think I can. And I felt that just like,
Yeah.
And my dad stood up, started to cry, walked over to me, grabbed me, and hugged me, and said, thank you, God. And he said, you have no idea how hard this has been on your mom and your brother and I through the years to watch you go through this and to worry every night. Because my mom had a little yellow phone beside her bed, and she had a sticky on there, you know, the kind you used to punch out with the little machine, and it made the raised letters. And it says Sherry on there. And that was beside her bed because on nights when things were really bad, or days when we were in a bad incident, dealing with something awful, I would call Mom, no matter what time, and I would say, Mom, pray. I never told her why. She never asked, but I know she prayed. But the phone, when we moved her into an assisted living facility, which was right next to our house, we hooked up that phone. Of course, everything is now cell phones or fancy phones.
Right.
No, they made arrangements so that that phone could be hooked up.
Wow.
And
Landline.
I could call my mom. She had severe dementia, but that phone stayed with her.
Oh, good.
To the end.
Yeah.
And I think she prayed for all of us to the end.
Yeah,
So.
I'm sure. Well, let's show the folks some of these, some of this paraphernalia that you brought.
It's not drug paraphernalia, Kurt. It's
legal.
Not that kind of paraphernalia.
Bad choice of words. We're going to save that for last because we want to show your quilt.
Okay.
But let's do, maybe Jeannie could zoom in on this. Which one's the older one?
This is the old one. This is a...
And then explain what that is. Yeah, see how...
This is the Watch Commander's badge.
Yeah.
I'm tilting it wrong.
Yeah, you can, there you go.
But I served as a watch commander or sergeant in the sheriff's office for several years before going into administration.
Before you became
And that's an
undersheriff,
old badge that's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
We passed down some of the badges, and that was an honor to receive one.
Yep.
And I don't know if me holding it is the right thing, because I got the mirror thing going on.
No, you're okay.
See, you're better. There you go.
All right. So explain what this is.
That's my sheriff's badge.
Okay.
And it says sheriff on it.
Sure. Imagine that. Sheriff's Office, State of Montana, Lewis and Clark County, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's a big deal, because it said that's earned.
That's kind of a big
that's
deal.
Earned. Yeah, that was a big deal.
Let's do this one. If Jeannie could zoom in on that, there we go.
That's a belt buckle that Lewis and Clark County Commissioners give their retiring elected officials.
Oh, okay.
And they gave that to me. It's engraved with my name and my dates of service on the back.
Okay,
And
nice.
that's pretty nice.
Okay.
That's my years of service. Every star was for 4 years of service.
4 years, yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 20 years.
I actually served 21 years.
Ah.
And my anniversary day is coming up. December 14th, 1987 was when I was hired.
Was that your first
at the
day?
sheriff's office. Yeah. That's a clock, a pocket watch.
Yeah.
It's a nice pocket watch.
Yeah.
I was a member of the board of directors for the Montana Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association for several years.
Yeah.
And they gave things like that to board members.
Yeah. You were the president, right?
For one
For 1 year?
yeah.
1 term, yeah.
And I didn't bring that because that was a very, very nice 40 caliber Glock pistol. And I didn't think you'd want me to set it on the table here.
We probably could have got away with that.
Maybe. My
Okay.
horse Amber,
Jeannie could shoot in on that.
she was one of a kind. She was a special animal.
Uh-huh.
And that's why I have the picture. Of course, my husband, the most handsome man in the world, is
Yeah, that's Glenn.
behind
Yeah. And
during the Last Chance Stampede.
Last Chance Stampede. And let's do, this is his pamphlet for when he passed,
That's my dad
1928 to 2017.
right there. There's Dad, and then there's Mom. And Dad
Yeah.
was a woodworker and built these cedar strip canoes.
He built that canoe.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so that was probably the summer before he passed.
Okay. Now, this is a brochure.
That's a brochure.
This is the from the National Keepsake Quilter newsletter, America's favorite quilt shop. And tell the folks, there's an article on Cheryl.
There's an article on me in there. And I made a quilt.
I think my arm is in the way, Jeannie. Can you try that? That's hard
There
to see.
you go.
That's Cheryl down in the corner.
Good luck trying to read that, though.
And yeah, and that's the quilt, right? Is that
That's
the one that you
quilt.
have with you?
I do.
Let's break that out.
This quilt, that's the bottom. That's the mountains,
Oh, okay.
and the top is the sky.
Let's go ahead and stand it up and see what
Can she
on
see
that
it?
top corner. Yeah, it's showing up there. And what place did you take in the national
In
contest?
the national contest, I took second,
Second place.
and I got $200.
All right. Did you spend it all in one place?
I did. But yeah, the little article, this quilt was inspired by the Montana Symphony Under the Stars.
All right.
That was during the 2000 fire season when things were burning. And
Yeah.
I actually broke away from my duties and went to the symphony that year. And they
So-
did have a little fireworks display,
Oh, yeah.
so it stuck with me.
So what are some of your other hobbies since your retirement, besides quilting?
I'm actually a professional quilter. I
so
don't
it's not even-
I don't make quilts. People give me their quilt tops,
I see. Okay.
and I put batting and backing with them, and I quilt them for people because it's hard. It's not an easy task
Right,
to quilt
yeah.
a quilt. But to me, that is one of the most satisfying things I've done.
Yeah.
I get to take somebody else's beautiful work and bring it to life.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty neat thing to do.
Nice.
I've probably quilted close to 1,000 quilts for people here in
Wow.
Helena since I started.
Wow.
I also teach classes on how to free motion quilt,
Uh-huh.
which is sitting down with your sewing machine and just moving the quilt and stitching it as you move it.
Wow.
And it's a pretty physical, it takes a lot of strength and a lot of endurance to do that.
Yeah, and you stay in shape.
And I stay in shape.
You still work out.
I do. I
Yeah.
work out for at least an hour every day.
Wow.
After having hip surgery,
No running.
no running, but I can still work out on the elliptical or a stationary bike.
There
And I
you
can
go.
still walk,
Sure,
I
of
get
course.
out and walk in the neighborhood. I can still ride.
Yeah.
And although we're down to one horse now,
Oh, yeah.
attrition has taken the herd to a smaller scale.
Yeah.
Um,
All right.
but that's what I do. And I think the biggest thing that I have to say was probably the biggest honor and probably the biggest job I've ever done was caring for my parents as they
Oh.
began their journey
Yeah.
to the end.
Yeah.
I was honored to be able to do that for both of them. Probably the hardest thing I've ever done.
And you've done some hard things.
Done some hard things.
Yeah.
But I tried very, very hard to give them an ending that was dignified, graceful,
Yeah.
and full of love,
Yeah.
because that's what they did for me.
Yeah. You were able to pay them back.
I was able to pay them back.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure they were very proud of everything else that you did. Accomplished.
They thought I was a goofy daughter.
Yeah. What's she gonna do next?
What's she gonna do now?
It's like
But-
Laurel and Hardy.
There's one thing I miss. Can I add something?
Sure, of course.
My dad and I, when I was young, this is just an example, we decided we wanted to climb Granite Peak. And you know where Granite Peak is, the highest peak in Montana.
Of course.
I'm
yeah.
down by Red Lodge.
It used to be 12,799 feet, but I looked lately and now it's up to 13,008 feet. So,
Oh my Lord.
so they measured it wrong the first time.
Or either that or it's a volcano. So we decided we were going to climb that. And I was young. I was probably 16 or 15.
Uh-huh.
And we all hiked up to the base camp for climbing the peak at Huckleberry Creek, where my mom and my brother and the dog camped, and then Dad and I forged on to try to climb Granite Peak.
Uh-huh.
If you've ever been up Granite Peak,
I have not.
it is a large amount of boulder fields
Oh, yeah.
that would stretch for miles,
Yeah.
and they were sheer boulder fields.
Yeah.
And we, of course, Dad and I roped ourselves together, and we traversed all those boulder fields, and we made it up to close to the peak. There's an ice bridge up there when the mountain let go. And I was ahead of Dad.
Mountain let go, you mean an avalanche?
The mountain let go, no, rock slide.
Oh, okay, rock slide. Yeah.
Those sheer boulder
Wow.
fields let go, and away it went. And my
Whoa.
dad was in that.
Wow.
And you have to remember, back in those days, there was no communication, no cell phones.
So it took him down the side of
Nothing.
the mountain.
It took him down the side of the mountain until the rope caught him. And
Oh,
I
okay.
luckily had made it somehow to a stable outcropping when that happened.
Wow.
And I was able to hang on and keep my dad from being killed.
From going all the way.
How I was, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know how. But I was able to get back down to him and then get him off that mountain.
Yeah.
And that's when I first discovered fear.
Yeah.
I didn't really have fear until then,
Yeah.
but that was true fear.
Yeah.
And getting off that mountain was probably one of the scariest things I've ever done.
Wow.
We came very, 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 very close to death, and I've come
Yeah.
close since then many
Right.
times. But that was a real eye-opening time. Dad was not injured badly. He was bruised and beaten up pretty significantly, but no broken bones. Luckily, we both had We both had first aid training because we were ski instructors.
Right there, that came in handy.
Came in handy at the
Yeah.
time.
Did
But
that incident ever make the paper?
Oh,
anywhere?
no.
Nothing. Huh.
No, we're not that kind of people.
Yeah.
We didn't ever talk about
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
But we made it down. We made it to the base camp. Mom took care of our injuries because I was beat up a little bit too.
Right. Wow.
And then we were able to get Dad out. And luckily at the base camp where you begin that ascent, there are other people camping.
Yeah, you had some help.
So we had some help.
Yeah.
And so it was easier to get him out.
Quite an experience.
And that was an experience that I thought was worth mentioning because
Yeah.
fear is something that we all have to face.
Right.
And it's how we face it that's the test of who we are.
Exactly. Yeah. Face your fear.
And walk right into it, even though it may seem very difficult,
Yeah.
because you'll come out the other side better.
Yeah.
That's-
Just think you go, girl.
That's my story. Curt, thank you.
Well, thanks for sharing some of your life with us.
You're
I really
welcome.
appreciate it.
Thank you for asking
It's
me.
quite a life you've had.
It isn't. It's a life. It's just a life.
Well, it certainly
Just a
wasn't
life.
boring.
No, it wasn't boring.
No, that's good. Okay, well, we're at near the end of our show, folks. I'd like to give a shout out to some of my other individual sponsors, consisting of Spring Creek Ranch, owners Julie Brown Petrie and her husband Chris Petrie, my buddy Ken Nettleton, Pat Murphy, Tim Ferreter, Gary Turcott, Bill Sprinkle, Bill Bentley, and the late Rick Pfeiffer. Also, I want to give a shameful plug to my calendars. This is my 10th annual edition of the Capital City Sports Greats calendar. And I'm selling them for $25 a piece, or 4 for $85, which is pretty darn cheap. And I'm going to give you some information to, if you're interested, how you can make a purchase. So back to the show, and this is the same contact information if you'd like to be a sponsor on the show. So send me a text at 406-594-2878. Just remember, hey Curt. My email is Curt52Sinnes, SYNNESS, @gmail.com. So long for now. Shaka kind thing, my brother. And with apologies to Jackie Gleason, a little traveling music, Jeannie, if you please.